Hello everyone. Today we're diving into a gruesome murder case that took place on Valentine's Day 1999 in Tuen Mun Village, Hong Kong. A man was brutally murdered inside his own apartment, and what's even more horrifying is that the killer dismembered the victim's body into pieces. The news spread like wildfire through the community, leaving everyone shaken and terrified. So who was the killer? Why did they carry out such a cruel act? Let's find out together. The Tuen Mun police received a phone call from a man reporting that his friend had been missing for several days. He feared something terrible might have happened to him and asked the police to investigate. Acting on this report, officers went to an apartment building in Tai Hing Village, Tuen Mun, Hong Kong, where the missing man lived. As soon as they arrived at the front door, a strong, foul odor hit them. The officers immediately knew something was wrong. Without hesitation, they broke the lock and entered the apartment. Inside, the scene was chaotic. Bloodstains were splattered across the floors and walls. But what really caught the officers' attention was a rusty, old metal chest placed in the middle of the room. When they opened it, the entire police team recoiled in shock. A man in his 20s was curled up inside, missing his left arm and left leg. His body had been covered with a large amount of salt, clearly an attempt by the killer to slow down decomposition. According to the man who made the report, the victim's name was Chung Wai Man. A few days before the discovery of the body, Chung had suddenly gone out of contact with everyone. Even more suspicious, the lock on his apartment door had been changed. Once the situation became clear, the police immediately expanded their search to the entire area surrounding the apartment. Eventually, they found another part of the victim's remains in a pile of trash. Through their investigation, police learned that Chung Wai Man was a very introverted person. His daily life revolved around working at a tea house, then returning home to keep to himself. No one had ever heard of him having conflicts, fights, or any history of violence. What's more, there were no signs of forced entry at any of the doors or windows. That meant the killer had most likely come through the front door. This led the police to suspect that the killer was someone the victim knew. Based on this new lead, the police shifted their focus to Chung Wai Man's girlfriend, Di Pao Wan. An arrest warrant was immediately issued and a full-scale manhunt was launched across the region. However, by that time, Di Pao Wan had already vanished without a trace. Just as the investigation seemed to be hitting a dead end, a man suddenly walked into the police station and voluntarily confessed to having played a part in the case. His name was Lau Quan Hua, Di Pao Wan's ex-boyfriend. A few days earlier, Di had called Lau, asking him to help her transport some items to Yuen Long. Believing it was just a routine favor, Lau agreed without hesitation. Everything went smoothly at first and there were no red flags. But on their way back, Di suddenly told him that she had accidentally broken a knife that belonged to a friend and she needed to buy a replacement. After returning to Tuen Mun, Lau Quan Hua went out and bought a new knife for her, thinking nothing of it. It wasn't until he saw the wanted poster that it hit him he may have unknowingly assisted a murderer. Shocked and overwhelmed, Lau tried calling Di, but she didn't answer. Feeling helpless and desperate to stop someone he once loved from. Making things worse, he did the only thing he could. He turned her in. Using the information provided by Lau, the police quickly tracked down Di Pao Wan's hideout. They surrounded the area and launched a swift operation. On February 26th, she was arrested and brought back to the station. The news of her arrest sent shockwaves through the entire Hong Kong community. No one could believe that a young and beautiful girl like her could be the one behind such a cold-blooded murder. But the roots of this tragedy could be traced back 5 years earlier, in 1994. At the time, Di Pao Wan was just a 14-year-old high school student. Because of her good looks, she caught the eye of a talent scout from the entertainment industry. They invited her to film commercials, which quickly made her a local celebrity in Tuen Mun. Her sudden fame drew the attention of many admirers. Men started pursuing her, but she rejected them all until one day, a chubby young man managed to win her heart. A schoolmate of Jewel Di worked part-time at a tea house every weekend. One day she visited friends there and happened to meet Victor Zhang, a server at the tea house. From the moment he saw her, Victor was deeply struck by Jewel's beauty. He soon reached out to her through a mutual friend, and over time, they grew close. Victor often invited Jewel and her friends to hang out at his apartment. Jewel, young and inexperienced, didn't think much of it. To her, it was just harmless fun and friendship. But what she didn't realize was that Victor had harbored sinister intentions toward her from the start. One day, when they were alone, Victor forcibly assaulted her. In such a situation, most people would report it to the police, but Jewel, instead of going to the authorities, made the shocking choice to start a romantic relationship with Victor. A few months later, Jewel began feeling unwell and visited a hospital. There, she discovered she was pregnant. Too young to confide in her parents, she turned to Victor for support. But when she told him about the pregnancy, he callously denied responsibility and demanded she get an abortion. The doctor warned them that Jewel, not yet 15 and still physically immature, could face life-threatening risks from the procedure. Terrified by this, Victor reluctantly agreed to let her keep the baby. In May 1995, Jewel gave birth to a son, whom she named Brave Rain Zhang. Still a minor and a student, she was clearly unprepared to raise a child and pinned her hopes on Victor. But even the sight of their adorable son didn't soften him. Victor decided to abandon the baby at the hospital gates. Jewel's desperate, tearful pleas finally forced him to agree to let the child stay in their home. During this time, Jewel D juggled raising her son and continuing her studies. She gave up her chance at university to care for Brave Rain, and this sacrifice planted the seeds of resentment in her heart. As they lived together, Victor Zhang's true colors emerged. His fiery temper led to frequent shouting matches, and he even physically lashed out at Jewel. Their relationship began to crack under the strain, and Jewel grew to regret staying with him. Desperate to escape, she started hiding her identity as a single mother and secretly dated other men. On Lunar New Year's Eve in 1998, Jewel met a taxi driver named Bright Liu at a market. They quickly fell head over heels, but fearing Victor would find out, Jewel broke things off after a few months. Throughout their romance, Bright remained unaware of her past or that she was the mother of a 3-year-old. After the breakup, he continued to pine for her, but Jewel, unfazed, moved on to a new chapter. One evening at a street food stall in Yellow Haven Port, she crossed paths with a firefighter named Steadfast Stone. Once again, Jewel sparked a secret romance with him. But Victor began to notice a shift in her behavior. She no longer doted on their son as she once did, and her demeanor grew colder. Suspecting infidelity, Victor's doubts fueled frequent arguments between them. On February 9, 1999, Victor invited his friend Loyal Liu out for drinks. Over their conversation, Victor shared his suspicions about Jewel and sought advice. In truth, Loyal had seen Jewel with other men, acting intimately on multiple occasions, but had kept quiet to avoid ruining their relationship. When Victor pressed him, Loyal could no longer hold back. He candidly revealed everything he knew, even showing Victor photos of Jewel with other men. Hearing this, Victor's rage boiled over. He couldn't believe that after years together, his girlfriend had betrayed him. Feeling his pride as a man shattered, he resolved to confront Jewel and settle things once and for all. As expected, when Jewel D and Victor Zhang met, their conversation quickly erupted into conflict. Victor began attacking Jewel, and in a desperate bid to defend herself, she grabbed whatever was within reach: knives, an iron hammer, even a chair. Her fierce resistance caught Victor off guard. He never imagined the usually docile Jewel could fight back with such ferocity. Overwhelmed, Victor was soon knocked to the ground. Blinded by years of pent-up rage, Jewel unleashed all her suppressed pain and resentment, striking him relentlessly. Only when her emotions settled did she realize the gravity of her actions. But it was too late. Victor lay dead at her feet. Panicked, Jewel knew she had to dispose of the body as quickly as possible. But as a first-time killer, she was at a loss for where to start. After careful thought, she turned to Bright Liu for help. Despite their breakup, Bright had never stopped caring for her, and they had stayed in touch. It was only now that he learned the woman he loved was a single mother, and now a murderer. The police later discovered that Bright's initial statement wasn't entirely truthful. At first, he tried to convince Jewel to turn herself in, but she broke down, recounting the years of abuse she endured from Victor. Moved by her story, Bright not only abandoned his efforts to persuade her, but also sympathized deeply and agreed to help her dispose of Victor's body. He saw a personal gain in this without Victor. He believed he could rekindle their romance. Unbeknownst to him, Jewel was already involved with another man, and Bright was merely a tool in her scheme. They planned to bury Victor's body first and later find a chance to dump it elsewhere, but their plan unraveled when Bright unexpectedly reported the crime to the police. Realizing he couldn't continue down this criminal path, Bright turned himself in, a decision that spared him from legal consequences. According to Loyal Liu, during the time of the incident, he had visited Victor Zhang's home but was turned away by Jewel D. He heard Victor's cries for help but hesitated to call the police, fearing it would stir trouble for his friend, especially since he knew the couple had been clashing recently. As an outsider, Loyal didn't want to meddle too deeply in their family affairs, so he chose not to report anything. It wasn't until days later, when he couldn't reach Victor, that he grew alarmed and finally contacted the authorities. If Loyal had acted sooner, he might have saved Victor's life. The forensic report revealed that while Victor's body bore numerous wounds, none were severe enough to be fatal. The true cause of death was excessive blood loss. Although Jewel had killed someone, her actions were deemed impulsive, driven by rage. In 2000, the court convicted her of manslaughter and illegal disposal of a body, sentencing her to 10 years in prison. Despite the decade behind bars, Jewel would only be 30 upon release, and she clung to dreams of remarrying and building a better life. The ordeal, however, left a deep scar on her once obedient son, Brave Rain Zhang. Previously a bright, kind, and studious boy, he became withdrawn and rebellious. He lost interest in school, spent his days wandering aimlessly, and eventually veered onto a dark path. Brave Rain was later convicted of aiding drug traffickers and sentenced to 5 years and 8 months in prison. If Jewel had sought justice through the law when Victor assaulted her years ago, their story might have unfolded differently. Perhaps she and her son would have been spared the tragic fate that led them both to prison and such a bitter end.
Have you ever thought that a teenager with innocent eyes and a heart yearning for love could become a tool in a murder conspiracy? Sabrina Zunick was born on October 27, 1994, in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio. Growing up in a family where both parents were alcoholics and subjected her to constant abuse, Sabrina spent her childhood moving between foster homes. By the age of 16, she had never had a stable home or foster parents who truly cared for her. She longed for a real family, a place where she felt safe and protected, but those dreams seemed out of reach. Her encounter with Lisa Nofel, a social worker, brought a new glimmer of hope. From their very first conversation, Lisa felt a deep sympathy and connection with the young girl. Believing that she and her husband, Kevin, could provide Sabrina with a stable life, Lisa made a major decision to adopt her. Having adopted children before, Lisa vividly remembered the day the whole family went to pick Sabrina up. At first glance, Sabrina appeared to be a sweet girl, and Lisa was convinced she could become a loving sister to her 2 young daughters, Megan and Haley. From the day she was adopted, Sabrina made great efforts to adapt. She diligently attended counseling sessions to learn how to cope with life's challenges. At the same time, she focused on her studies and achieved good academic performance, quickly integrating into the Nofel family. Over a year passed, and everything seemed to be going well. Sabrina became increasingly attached to Megan and Haley while also developing a close relationship with Kevin. However, not long after, strange things began happening in the household. Kevin started spending more time alone with Sabrina, neglecting the rest of the family. Noticing this change, Lisa tried to discuss it with Kevin via text messages, but he dismissed her concerns, insisting that she was overreacting. With her experience in family services, Lisa quickly sensed that something was wrong between Kevin and Sabrina. She realized that Sabrina, a girl who had never truly experienced love or security, could easily fall prey to Kevin's manipulation. He was no different from the predators Lisa had worked to protect other victims from. Unable to find concrete evidence of her suspicions, Lisa began discussing divorce with Kevin and considered returning Sabrina to the foster system. However, Kevin insisted that they should wait until Sabrina graduated high school before letting her go. During this time, Lisa became stricter with Sabrina, ensuring she stayed home to prevent Kevin from approaching her. However, Lisa's protection became excessive. Gradually, Sabrina was isolated from her sisters, Megan and Haley, making the household atmosphere increasingly tense. Conflict arose not only between Lisa and Sabrina, but also between Sabrina and Megan. Things got worse and worse. I never thought it would go this far. That day, I found it strange when Dad was leaving for work. Sabrina hugged him, and they whispered to each other for a long time, Megan recalled. A blood-soaked tragedy. Megan recounted that she noticed Sabrina receiving an unusual number of messages during dinner, which continued throughout the evening. Even past bedtime, Sabrina's phone kept ringing from the next room. Then, at around 1 a.m., a piercing scream shattered the quiet night. Running downstairs, Megan saw Sabrina stabbing her mother. In utter panic, she screamed, "Don't hurt my mom," and tried to intervene, but was pushed aside by Sabrina. With no other option, Megan rushed to her room and dialed 911. The 13-year-old girl desperately tried to explain the situation to the emergency dispatcher while simultaneously struggling with Sabrina to protect her mother. That 6-minute-long scuffle became the worst nightmare of Megan's life. The memory of that horrifying night haunted her, robbing her of sleep and leaving her unsure when the pain would ever subside. When the police arrived at the scene, they mistook Megan for Sabrina and immediately aimed their guns at her. In panic, Megan screamed, "You need to hurry, hurry." Once the officers realized she was not the killer, they moved further into the house, calling out for Sabrina and Lisa, but were met with eerie silence. Finally, in the first room just past the staircase, they came face to face with Sabrina. She stood there, covered in blood, still gripping the knife. At that moment, the tension was suffocating, one officer recalled. "I saw the blood dripping from the blade, saw the blood covering her. We immediately shouted for her to drop the knife." Sabrina stood motionless, staring blankly at the officer for a few seconds, as if entranced. Then suddenly, she dropped the knife and raised her hands in surrender. As her hands were cuffed, Officer Randy Mullinax moved toward the bed where Lisa lay. "It was hard to make out anything," Mullinax recalled. "The victim looked as if she had been bathed in blood. At that moment, I knew there was nothing we could do to save her." When Sabrina was escorted outside, Mullinax began inspecting the scene. Suddenly, a strange sound startled him. It was the cry of a child. Following the sound, they discovered a very young girl sobbing inside a wardrobe. It was Haley Knofel, Megan's youngest sister, who had crawled into the closet to hide when the attack occurred. After being arrested, Sabrina was taken to the hospital to treat the wounds on her hands, a result of her struggle with Lisa and Megan. Once her condition stabilized, the police brought her back to the station and immediately began the interrogation. There, Sabrina pretended as if she remembered nothing about what had happened. However, when the detectives mentioned Haley and Megan, she couldn't conceal her emotions. The primary goal of the first interview was to uncover the truth. They had seen her step out of the room with a knife in her hand, proving that she was the perpetrator. More than an hour passed, yet Sabrina continued to insist that she remembered nothing. She claimed to have taken too much ibuprofen, passed out, and only regained consciousness in the hospital. But she couldn't deceive Parmeter, a seasoned detective. He noticed something odd. Sabrina unconsciously scratched her forehead for no apparent reason. From his experience, actions like touching the face, scratching the forehead, or tapping the feet often indicated that a person was lying or feeling anxious. Some officers at the station believed an investigation wasn't necessary since they had caught Sabrina red-handed with a murder weapon, and Megan was a key witness. However, Parmeter found it puzzling. Rarely did a suspect completely deny involvement when caught at the scene. This led him to make an important decision: to invite Kevin in for questioning. Surprisingly, Kevin refused the invitation through his lawyer, Michael Connick. To persuade both of them to cooperate, Parmeter fabricated a reason, stating that they would only discuss Lisa's work. The police couldn't help but find this suspicious. Why didn't Kevin want to help? Why was Michael so adamantly protecting his client? But what truly shocked Parmenter was their reaction when he mentioned Sabrina. Up until that moment, the detective had no knowledge of the strange relationship between Kevin and Sabrina. After the incident, Kevin spent a few days taking care of Megan before her biological father took her away from the house. However, in that short time, the 13-year-old girl witnessed several unusual occurrences following the horrifying tragedy. Just hours after his wife was murdered, Kevin called the insurance company. It turned out that he had canceled his own and his children's policies, transferred all benefits to Lisa's name, and increased the coverage fourfold, just 6 months before her death. After the call, Kevin received over $785,000 in insurance money, and that very morning withdrew and spent it all. He bought an RV, renovated the house, and indulged in lavish expenses, all funded by the insurance payout from his deceased wife. The very next day, Kevin began discarding Lisa's belongings as if she had never existed. These actions made Megan deeply suspicious. Her mother hadn't died from cancer or any illness. She had been brutally murdered. The coldness and bizarre behavior of her stepfather solidified Megan's belief that this wasn't just a random tragedy, but meticulously planned murder. During the remaining time, Kevin tried to visit Sabrina in prison every day, but was refused. Megan couldn't help but wonder why Kevin was acting like this, but his strange behavior didn't stop there. The next day, Kevin brought an axe into her mother's bedroom and repeatedly used it to hack apart the bed, where Lisa had been stabbed to death. Even after reuniting with her biological father, Megan's suspicions continued to grow. Every time she saw Kevin, she noticed something strange about his behavior. At Lisa's funeral, Kevin shocked everyone by asking them to pray for Sabrina, the very person accused of murdering the woman they had gathered to mourn. With just one glance at her stepfather that day, Megan felt an unsettling chill. Kevin showed no emotion, not even shedding a single tear. It was as if, to him, her mother had never existed. 6 months later, the case seemed to have gone cold. Both Megan and Detective Parmenter were convinced that Sabrina was the perpetrator, but the motive behind her actions remained a mystery. Meanwhile, they couldn't shake the eerie feeling about Kevin's behavior ever since his wife's murder. Everything changed when Sabrina, still in custody, agreed to meet with prosecutor Karen Kowal through a process called a proffer. A proffer is a preliminary step to demonstrate goodwill. It allows defense attorneys and prosecutors to meet with the accused, giving them an opportunity to speak honestly and reveal the full truth about what happened. As Parmenter and Kowal continued their investigation, they began to suspect that Sabrina had been trying to protect someone when she claimed she had blacked out during the attack. Even while in custody, Sabrina seemed deeply remorseful for what she had done, and her concern for her foster family never faded. Thus, Kowal got straight to the point during the interview. For what they gathered, Sabrina seemed to have been sexually abused by her adoptive father, Kevin. He tried to build Sabrina's trust by showing her particular attention, giving her gifts that made a 17-year-old girl feel deeply dependent on him. He even promised to help her get into medical school and suggested that she practice on his body. Unsurprisingly, within a short time, he got what he wanted, and they engaged in this every time they were alone together. It was disgusting. During one visit, when Sabrina had to undergo an appendectomy, I went to see her in the hospital. Not long after I left, I realized I had forgotten something and went back to get it, only to witness Kevin having sex with her on the hospital bed, right after she had just undergone surgery. That scene made me feel absolutely sick, recounted Nicole Corbett, a social worker. The situation worsened as Kevin, after each sexual encounter, insisted that the only way for them to be together was to eliminate Lisa permanently. Gradually, he succeeded in manipulating Sabrina into believing that killing Lisa was the only option. However, things did not go as planned. Lisa woke up while Sabrina was standing by her adoptive mother's bed. Realizing she had crossed an irreversible line, Sabrina attacked Lisa, and the situation escalated further when she saw Megan trying to protect her mother. The breakthrough. At first, Kowal and Perpetrator were skeptical, as Sabrina could have easily fabricated the story. However, rather than displaying the typical signs of deception, she was now confident, assertive, and consistent in her account. The police reached out to Sabrina's closest friend, Autumn. The two shared all their secrets and often confided in each other about their family lives. Autumn was the person Sabrina had once expressed her fears and suspicions about Kevin's strange behavior toward her. Although Autumn had no direct relationship with Kevin, through Sabrina, she recognized him as a controlling, manipulative, and untrustworthy person. She had even warned Sabrina about the psychological manipulation tactics Kevin was using on her. Autumn revealed that she had once overheard Kevin discussing a plan to have Lisa murdered by his foster daughter. As a result, the police equipped Autumn with a wiretap and sent her to confront Kevin. When she accused him of orchestrating his wife's murder through his foster daughter, Kevin neither denied nor reacted at all. If you were innocent and falsely accused of being involved in such a crime, your instinctive response would be to immediately refute it, saying something like, "What are you talking about? I have no idea what you mean." However, Kevin's lack of reaction was telling. With Sabrina's and Autumn's statements, Perpetrator wasted no time. He and the police immediately went to Kevin Noful's house to arrest him. Not long after his arrest, a Lake County grand jury indicted Kevin for conspiring to murder Lisa with the help of his foster daughter. Additionally, he was charged with sexual assault due to his illicit relationship with the teenager. During the trial, 12 witnesses testified, including Sabrina's teachers, social workers, as well as the Noful family's friends and relatives. Each one of them confirmed Kevin's suspicious behavior after the murder, and many had either known about or witnessed his inappropriate advances toward Sabrina. Even Kevin's best friend, David Strunk, testified against him. In a report he filled out just weeks after the crime, David revealed that Kevin had immediately wanted to show him explicit photos of Sabrina and constantly talked about wanting to visit her in prison. He told me he just wanted to let her know he was still there to support her. I was shocked that he would want to visit the person who had just killed his wife. After 9 hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Kevin Noful was convicted of 3 charges: sexual assault, conspiracy to commit murder, and complicity in murder. In an interview with Karen Kowal, the lead prosecutor in the case, journalist Josh Mankiewicz remarked that despite the conviction, there was no real sense of satisfaction in the outcome. In reality, this was a cycle of betrayal. Kevin betrayed Lisa, Sabrina betrayed Lisa, then Kevin betrayed Sabrina, and in the end, Sabrina betrayed Kevin. The journalist reflected. However, the journalist forgot one crucial person in this story, Megan. She not only witnessed the brutal attack, but also tried in vain to save her mother. Now, she has to carry that pain for the rest of her life. If I had to choose one emotion, I would say anger. I'm very angry. Losing someone who helped so many people and did everything she could for her family is truly devastating. Megan said, Sabrina pleaded guilty to all charges and, like Kevin, was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole until 2042. During the trial, 19-year-old Sabrina Zunick admitted that she had loved her foster father and was afraid he would commit suicide if she didn't go through with his plan to kill his wife. By 2017, Haley and Megan filed a lawsuit and were awarded over $6 million in damages. From her cell in Dayton Correctional Institution, Sabrina has been interviewed twice since her incarceration. Once by Dateline in 2015 and again by HLN in 2020. In both interviews, she pleaded for forgiveness from her foster sisters. I now realize that there was more than one victim in this story. If I had the chance, I would tell them that I was selfish, I am sorry, and I never meant to hurt them. And I know, how can I even say that when I killed their mother? I was in a state where I didn't think about anyone but myself, and that was a mistake, an irreversible one. No matter what I say, I can't bring her back. I can't undo what happened or what they felt. But if anything could mean something, I truly am sorry. Since Sabrina and Kevin's conviction, Megan has grown into a strong and independent woman. While she may never forgive her foster sister, she has transformed her pain into purpose. She majored in criminal justice, hoping that one day she could bring justice to those who, like her, had been victims of unimaginable circumstances. Sabrina, once a teenage girl embraced by the loving arms of Lisa, never imagined that her life would take such a dark turn. Manipulated and exploited by her ruthless stepfather, she was drawn into a web of lies and crime. Under his control, she committed the ultimate betrayal, murdering the very woman who had cared for and protected her like her own daughter. This case was shocking not only because of its brutality, but also because it demonstrated how familial love was twisted into a tool for manipulation, shattering the very foundation of trust and morality within a household. Many people sympathize with Sabrina, while others condemn her, arguing that at 17 years old, she was old enough to know right from wrong. And what do you think?